Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general.
The Handmaid's Tale follows the story of Offred, who's a handmaid in the post-revolution world of Gilead, formerly America. Episode 8, Jezebels, is an episode which largely takes place from Nick's point of view, showing how back before the fall of society he was really bad at work and directionless, but he did care for his family, and that led his job seeker guy to giving him a heart-to-heart, and wouldn't you know, they're both really up on their biblical stuff. So the guy asks him to come to a meeting of his group's chapter, and after that, he ends up becoming a driver for them, and gets to eavesdrop on Commander Shakespeare and all his pals discussing how they're going to come up with a handmaid idea, and ends up showing that he's a smart company man. And in the end, that leads to him becoming an eye and dobbing in his boss and basically being like an undercover secret policeman. And then he gets the gig at Commander Shaky's place, where the previous handmaid gets herself dead. And by this point, we're back in the nowadays, and Offred's kind of enjoying spending her nights with him. But then one evening, Commander Shakespeare turns up at her room and is like, "Hey, the wife's away, and I've got you a present." And he shaves her legs and gives her some makeup and a sparkly dress. And then she gets into the car and passes like a checkpoint, pretending to be Mr. Shakespeare. And they get to like a big hotel, and it turns out there's a whole load of dissident women living there, acting like courtesans. And then she spots Moira, and bumps into her in the bathroom, and it turns out this is just a big place where all the commanders meet up, and they either spend time with the courtesans there, or they bring their own handmaids, and then they arrange to meet up back later on. But then she goes back off with Mr. Shakespeare, and after a while takes her up to her hotel room and wants to get busy, so she plays along, because what else can she do? Meanwhile, Nick's downstairs in the kitchen, trading some stuff with like a healthful and pleasant Martha, who gives him some pregnancy tests and some prescription drugs. And they seem to be getting on pretty well, and she wants to cook him some food, and then wants to give him like a big hug and a snog or something, but he's not really into it that night. And Offred ends up sneaking out of the room once Commander Shakespeare's asleep, and she escapes down to where the women sleep, and then Moira lays out the plain sad facts of her life. She's a Jezebel now, and she's there to be used by the rich men, but she still gets to drink and take a lot of drugs and gets well fed, so she's kind of resigned to that being her life now. And even June telling her about how Luke is still alive isn't enough to get her out of her doldrums. And eventually, June has to head back home again, and the next day Lady Macbeth gets back home, and things are kind of awkward all round, especially with Nick, who now says he wants to break it off with June, and understandably this goes down like a lead balloon, to the point when, even when he tries to placate her by telling her stuff like his name and where he's from, she's just like, "Get stuffed mate, I don't care." And then when Lady Macbeth stops June in the hall with a present, it's a little ballerina music box, and Offred takes it upstairs and then angrily carves a new message into the cupboard wall. So what did I think? Well, I mean, again, I think this was an absolutely fantastic episode of television, and I really have to commend the show about the way it's covering the story, and how it's actually expanding on the book storyline with a bit more sense. Because, I mean, the thing is, I've already read the book of this, so I kind of know that some of the things are going to happen. So I knew, for example, the commander was going to be taking her to this sort of billionaires hellfire club sort of place, because that happens in the book. And it was really interesting managing to see all of June's trepidation and the amount of like places they had to go through to get there, even though I knew where it was actually going. But I also really liked that we got to see Moira's side of things, and it sets up a bit more of the universe and more of a potential future scenario where June can maybe try and save her or something. But it also alters the dynamic between the pair of them, since June back in the day seemed like a far more meek person and Moira was all fire and brimstone, and yet now it's gone the other way because Moira's all defeated and June's the one who's actually talking about escaping. There was also the fact that absolutely everybody was really awkward this week in one way or another, where it was Nick's constant awkwardness or June being uncomfortable and pretty much the whole time, and or the commander's jittery face when he was like lying to his wife, or that she seemed a bit creeped out when Offred took the box. I mean, nobody's happy, which is kind of a running theme in this at this point. And also, I just loved some of the wee touches, like the fact that, you know, when June put the makeup on, honestly, I just kept thinking of that bit from The Simpsons where Homer makes the makeup shotgun.
Now you're ready for a night on the town.
Homer, you've got it set on whore.
I mean, you know, I'm not saying it was bad, but she did look kind of garish. And also, like, the manic face she pulls in the reflection of the box when she thanks her. That was total grade A psycho eyes there. I mean, yeah, June looks completely mental. And I really liked little bits and bobs, like how they've introduced, like, this whole thing with Nick and this Martha. I mean, I'm not sure if that's an ongoing character, but yeah, it just seemed really interesting. It's just a little expansion of the world. There's things going on. There's a bit of trading. There's a bit of things happening here and there. And some people are finding happiness where they can. But going back to the ballerina in the box scene, That's something that I thought the show actually could have done just a wee bit better. You see, there's this term that they use in film writing called lamp shading, which basically is when you do something in a film that's kind of silly or off the wall, or, sometimes a bit too obvious, they get around people basically saying, hang on, this is all a bit silly, by essentially pointing it out to them. I mean, you've seen it happen on things before.
Okay, look, the city is flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
And it kind of felt to an extent that was what was going on here, because I totally got the point in the music box as soon as she opened it. And then the show goes on not only to spell out by June being boxed in within the shot's framing, but then literally having her spell out in dialogue that she feels like a little ballerina girl in a box that plays when the box gets opened. And it all just felt like a little bit on the nose. Also, just as a random thing, I mean, what was with this little goofy smile here? I mean, honestly, she looks like she was 12 and she just discovered that boys exist. I mean, yeah, that was just a really weird moment, a really odd choice for the actress, and it totally threw me. But a more serious thing, one issue is that this episode was ostensibly about Nick, but it felt like it was so few little bits and bobs that I actually wanted to know a lot more. And maybe actually that's to its credit, that I just wanted to know what was going on more. And I think that's partly because, as I said before, the show's been a bit thin with plot. I mean, there's so much slow-mo in this show, and so many scenes of people not talking and nothing much happening, because it's all thematic, and it's part of the reason it works. But it's also partly because the book's not actually that long, and we're pretty far through it. I mean, we must be more than 2/3 of the way through the book. And I have heard some chat online that the first season of the show is basically just the events of the book, and then the further seasons are continuing with the original stuff. And I know that obviously Margaret Atwood has written a sequel, Testament, but I presume that's got absolutely nothing to do with this show. But what I feel is that they're actually maybe stretching the material a bit, but they haven't quite grasped onto that maybe they should actually just expand it a lot more. And maybe they're going to do that down the line, but yeah, I just felt like I wanted more of the stuff about Nick. I wanted more things to be happening. I wanted more of her speaking to Moira, but instead it was just an awful lot of shots of driving in the car and shots of her walking in slow motion, which they've done before. But it's still not a bad episode. I'm still having a blast with the show, and generally this was really pretty solid stuff. So until next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions. And a wee shout out to my awesome patrons, especially to Judith Coloma and Michelle Forbes, my top tier patrons. You know I love you guys, and your support really means the world to me. Thank you so much, everybody. Everyone take care, and I'll see you all later. Bye bye.